or for short, SAD, we can grow 83% of our food. So the bananas and other things, but this is by weight. Granted, dairy and meat are a huge percentage of the weight, not by calories, not by other aspects. And so of the per weight, we can grow 83%. The blue represents the 7% that we have identified is currently being grown and consumed in the region, which is higher than just about anywhere else in the country because of the milk dairy, again, by weight. We have a milk dairy with almost all the farmers in our region, and all that milk is sold. I took out that gallonage that was sold, and we got the weight, and so we figured out it was a little less than 7%, and then all the farmers markets, all the CSAs filled out the rest. But still, most of it is still being imported from other places. You also, yeah.
It doesn't include fish.
It does include fish. Includes everything. Everything we consume. We also looked at the human impact. In building a new diet, we looked at diabetes. We looked at issues around health. We had experts work with us on this. And way back in 2002, $92.6 billion spent nationally. And this number will come to play later as we look at the economic impact.
Spent nationally what, on food?
On obesity, related health care. Thanks for the clarification. And if you please jot out whenever you have clarification or a question that needs to be answered. So we pulled together some experts and said, what would it take, or really the first question is, can we produce a local diet that is healthy, 100% grown in our region? And they said, what happens if we can't? I said, then tell us that. What would we need to bring in? So they went to it and they did the research. Oh my gosh. Get a bunch of doctors together, overachievers to begin with, and they really did an incredible amount of work and came up with a new diet. And in comparison to the standard American diet in green, you can see the changes. You've got less meat, less nuts, actually more nuts, less dairy, a lot more legumes, less grains, less fats, and these doctors said, guess what? We don't need any sugar. So that really was interesting. And I'll tell you a little bit how I've adapted this diet for me a little bit later. So we looked at, as an example, meat. You've got your pie there, you've got the standard selections. If you look at the new diet, not only are there different things on there, there's also, we have bunny and some other parts to this, but notice the pie is smaller. A lot of the benefit for health is just by eating less calories per day. And I can attest with that with my weight loss in the last 4 weeks. I then went through and talked and got all the statistics for every crop, every meat, what do we consume per pound, per person, and what has to be produced. And in doing that, I then could calculate how many acres would be needed. Because again, I'm trying to find, do we have the carrying capacity to produce all the food that we need to eat? And so if you look at pork as an example, if you look at the first one, first amount that they need to be considered is the acres needed for their direct consumption of their ration. And this is not as efficient as West, but we have local food characteristics and local raising techniques. So we also have the sow. A sow will produce 21 offspring a year. Now that sow has to be accounted for. What each she ate, all that involved. Also, her meat has to be accounted for at the end of her reproductive life cycle. So to try to get a true assessment of how many acres it takes to grow our pork, you need to include all the different variables for production. Yes?
Those fractional numbers, is that a per person?
That is a per pig.
Per pig.
Acreage per pig, and then I extrapolated the pounds produced plus the mother and the father, 1/420th of the boar. Okay? I added all of those meats in with the meat typically produced in our area, and then, you know, took all the grains and inputs and extrapolated the per person consumption based on the national average. Now, the national average is the standard American diet. We also looked at the recommended new diet. And you can see the difference between this diet and this diet in acres. And that's called volume. They just say we need to eat less pigs. Yeah.
So that 10,251 acres there, is that the amount of acreage required in this area to raise enough pork for people in this?
Exactly.
Okay.
Everyone get that? That's what we will need with a 100% local diet for our area to produce it all and consume it all. And we also, just other things I also added seeds to grow the feeds. Okay? You have a certain amount of acres that's used to grow the seeds, to grow the foods for the pigs. And that was added too. And in fact, I just went to a national conference, and the expert, the leading guy in the U.S. on doing these assessments, he called me over after my presentation. He says, "You beat me." He didn't add this. He said everything else he added. So he didn't add that aspect. But our numbers ended up being almost identical between his study in New York and my study here. Yeah.
Maybe you're going to get to this, and maybe if not, I have a question. If 90% of the farmers
We'll get to that.
don't make money, and you want to scale up this hugely, you're going to have it do it on an economic basis and not for the love of it.
We're going to deal with economics exclusively at the end, and it'll go through some of those scenarios. Exactly. So I'm just going to briefly go through this because I do want to have time for questions. I did this for all the crops. Tell me, what vegetable do you think we eat the most of?
Onion.
Corn?
Onions.
Onions?
Potato.
Potato! Yeah, there you go, winner. So it's fascinating to learn the different things that are going on. Potatoes is 51 pounds. Head lettuce, 25 pounds throughout the year. It's just in everything. But notice, sweet corn, 6.5. Carrots, 6. Broccoli, 1.4. I ate 1.4 pounds in the last 2 days. It's in. So a lot of people aren't eating it. So this looked at acres needed for the different food groups, for the different diets. Okay? So then I extrapolate out by using farm type in our area, and we'll need about 7,400 farmers. More than the SAD diet, even though it's less calories, because of the nature of the food. Vegetable production and other productions will actually require additional lands. So, very interesting things. 7,000 farmers, will get to that. So, in our area, the two diets, we need 500,000 acres for the SAD diet and 369,000 for the new recommended diet by the team of doctors and experts. Do we have enough land then? In theory? It's good to know this because say we needed 3 million acres and we only have 1.7 of reasonable acres available, then we have to ask a whole nother set of questions. So it's important for me to have this base because we actually can work towards this now with a realistic thing as we address the economics of it. So, economics. We look at the numbers here. The current food expenditure in our region is $1.26 billion, $1.27 billion every year on food. Now, as we go to this, we have to look at the food dollar. Of this money, how is that captured, and which part is responsible for which? 19 cents on the dollar is the farmer. So of all that money, 19 cents on the dollar is the farmer's share, which is 240 million. But the